Henry Cole sat alone inside his new mountain cottage, breathing in the cold morning air that drifted through the open window. After retiring from 4 decades of restoring old buildings, he had finally found peace in the quiet slopes of Pinecrest Mountain. But his phone rang at exactly 6:30 a.m., a time no one ever called. He fumbled for it, still half asleep from unpacking boxes all night. "Dad. I need your help," his son Jason said, his voice trembling and rushed. Henry's heart froze. "Is Liam okay?" he asked, fearing the worst for his 10-year-old grandson. Jason hesitated, then whispered, "Dad, the bank is taking our house. If you don't sign the cottage over, Liam will lose his home." Henry stood by the window, staring at the sunrise painting the mountains in warm gold as Jason continued speaking in a desperate voice. "We're behind on payments. They gave us 10 days, Jason said, sounding like he could barely breathe. Henry swallowed hard, trying to understand. "Jason, how did things get this bad?" he asked calmly, but Jason cut him off. "Dad, this isn't about explanations. I need the cottage as collateral. Just sign the papers. Please, do it for Liam." The call ended suddenly. The silence inside the cottage pressed heavily against Henry's chest. After 40 years of dreaming about a mountain home, someone already wanted to take it away. With trembling hands, Henry made coffee and walked slowly across the half-unpacked living room. "Collateral," he repeated under his breath, trying to understand the rush behind the demand. Jason had always been emotional, but today sounded different, desperate in a way that didn't feel natural. Henry thought about all he had done for his son over the years, the college bills he paid, the wedding he funded, the down payment he loaned. "Why now?" he whispered. His phone buzzed again. A text from Jason read, "Please, Dad. You're the only one who can save us." Henry looked around the cottage, the dream he had waited decades for, and suspicion settled deep inside him. He stepped outside onto the wooden deck, allowing the sharp morning air to clear his mind. His neighbor, Mr. Carter, a retired lawyer with a calm voice and sharp eyes, had visited yesterday and mentioned something important about Colorado property laws that protected older homeowners from being pressured or tricked. Henry hadn't thought much of it then. Now he couldn't ignore it. Something about Jason's timing, the urgency, and the refusal to answer simple questions didn't sit right. Henry sat down with his coffee and whispered, "Slow down, Henry. Read the fine print first." The mountain stood tall and silent, reminding him that strong foundations never crumble without warning signs. Henry spent the next 3 days trying to gather more information, calling Jason again and again. Each call offered nothing but vague explanations and rising tension. "It's complicated, Dad," Jason kept saying. "Unexpected expenses. Things spiraled out of control." None of it made sense. When Henry finally asked, "How much behind are you?" Jason hesitated before answering, "About 43,000. Henry nearly dropped the phone. 43, he repeated slowly. "Jason, how does anyone fall that far behind without saying a word?" But Jason brushed it off. "Dad, stop overthinking. Just wait for the realtor. He'll explain everything." Henry lowered the phone, confusion turning into something much heavier. On the 4th morning, Mr. Carter knocked on Henry's door carrying a small box of homemade muffins. The older man studied Henry's tired eyes and asked softly, "Everything all right, friend?" Henry hesitated, then shared pieces of the story, Jason's call, the urgency, and the strange silence around the details. Mr. Carter listened carefully, then said, "People in panic often hide the truth. People with plans hide even more." He leaned closer. "Henry, don't sign anything quickly. Colorado law protects seniors from pressure tactics. If he's pushing this hard, something is wrong." Henry nodded slowly, realizing the warning was not casual, it was deliberate. The next afternoon, Henry drove down to Pinecrest Town to clear his mind and buy groceries. He stopped at a small coffee shop called Mountain Brews, a cozy place filled with warm brick walls and wooden beams. He ordered a dark roast and found a quiet corner to think. But as he settled into his seat, familiar voices floated from behind the partition. One of them was Megan's. "Jason says the cabin's worth nearly 500 grand, she said, laughing softly. "Once the old man signs the transfer, we sell it fast. We pay off Jason's debt and finally take that Mexico trip." Henry froze, his hand tightening around his cup. A second woman whispered, "But Megan, isn't the cabin supposed to be collateral for the bank?" Megan scoffed loudly. There's no foreclosure. That story was only to soften him. The grandson angle works best on older parents. Makes them emotional. Henry felt his heartbeat hammer inside his chest as she continued. Jason owes $85,000 in poker debts. We need the cabin sold before everything collapses. The words stabbed through Henry like ice. Not $43,000. Not overdue payments. Poker debts. Lies. Manipulation. Henry closed his eyes slowly. The betrayal burned deep, not because of Megan, but because Jason had allowed it. When their conversation shifted to vacation plans, Henry quietly stood, left cash for his drink, and walked out without them noticing. He sat inside his truck for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel as everything settled into place. His son wasn't drowning in bills, he was drowning in selfish choices. Choices he planned to cover using his father's dream home. So that's their plan, Henry whispered. His breath shook, but his mind was frighteningly calm. Years of handling difficult projects had trained him well. Never react in panic. Observe. Analyze. Prepare. Henry put the key into the ignition with a new purpose burning inside him. He didn't drive home immediately. Instead, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts until he found the name he needed, Mr. Daniels, the lawyer he trusted from an old restoration project. Henry called him instantly. I need legal protection for my property, he said without hesitation. Family matter. Urgent. Mr. Daniels's voice shifted at once into professional mode. Tell me everything, he said. Henry explained the lies, the overheard conversation, the $85,000 debt. When he finished, Mr. Daniels replied, Then let's make your cottage legally untouchable before they arrive. We'll build a wall they cannot climb. Henry looked at the mountains and whispered, Good. It's time they learn who they're dealing with. Henry drove straight to Mr. Daniels's office the next morning, arriving before the building even opened. The lawyer welcomed him inside with a firm handshake and calm eyes. This isn't a small mistake, Henry, he said after hearing the full story again. Your son and his wife planned a financial trap. But we can stop it. He spread several documents across the desk. A life estate deed. A homestead declaration. A property protection clause. Once filed, no one can touch this cottage, not even family. Henry nodded slowly. Let's do it, he said. Before Jason steps 1 foot on my porch. 4 hours. The two men worked through the paperwork. Mr. Daniels explained each line while Henry listened carefully, signing only after reading every word. This protects you while you're alive, the lawyer said, sliding the life estate deed forward. And this, he added, tapping another document, limits what anyone can do with the property after you. By lunchtime, everything was signed, notarized, and ready for filing. They'll arrive in a few days thinking they're walking into an easy plan, Mr. Daniels said. Instead, they'll walk into a wall. Henry exhaled slowly, feeling strength replace the shock. Back at the cottage, Henry sat on the deck watching the wind push through the pine trees. The betrayal still stung, but the calmness returning to his chest felt new, steady, controlled, intentional. Jason had underestimated him, treating him like an old man with soft judgment. But Henry was not soft. Not anymore. As he reviewed the copies of the legal documents, he whispered to himself, You wanted a signature, Jason. You'll get one. Just not the one you expected. The mountains around him seemed to nod in agreement. 2 days later, the sound of 3 car engines echoed through the trees. Jason's black SUV pulled up first. Megan's silver sedan followed. Then a clean-cut man in a suit stepped out of a third car, clearly the realtor. Henry stood on his porch, hands behind his back. Jason walked fast toward him with a practiced smile. Dad. Great to see you. Ready to get this sorted. Megan added, We really appreciate this, Henry. Henry didn't smile. Come inside, he said in a calm voice that made Jason pause for a split second. They gathered around Henry's dining table, the same one he had sanded himself just weeks earlier. The realtor opened his briefcase and spread several papers across the wood. We just need your signature on these, he said confidently. This is a standard temporary transfer, nothing to worry about. Megan leaned forward eagerly. It'll save everything, Henry. Liam will be safe. But Henry noticed something important. She could not meet his eyes. Jason tapped the paper. Dad, just sign. We're already behind schedule. Henry didn't touch the pen. Instead, he reached for his folder and placed it gently on the table. Before I sign anything, he said, you'll need to see these. He pulled out the life estate deed and slid it toward the realtor. This protects my right to live here until I die. Next, he placed the homestead declaration on top. This stops any creditor or gambling debt from touching this place. Jason blinked rapidly. Megan's smile vanished. The realtor's face lost its color. Mr. Cole, these documents legally block everything we discussed, he stuttered. Henry leaned back calmly. Now tell me again, he said quietly, what exactly were you planning to do with my cottage? Megan's voice trembled first. Henry, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, he cut in. I heard you at Mountain Brews. You planned to sell my home to pay off Jason's poker debts. Jason's head snapped toward Megan, shocked she had been overheard. The room filled with a silence so heavy it felt like the walls were listening. Dad. I can explain, Jason whispered. Then start, Henry replied coldly. Jason opened his mouth, but no words came. Megan stepped in instead. Fine. Yes, we planned it. Things are hard, Henry. You have this place all to yourself, and we're drowning. Henry stared at her. So you decided to drown me instead? She flinched. Jason finally managed, Dad, please. I made mistakes, but I did it for my family. No, Henry said. You did it because you thought I'd roll over like always. The truth hit Jason so hard he lowered his eyes. The realtor started gathering his documents quickly. Mr. Cole, since these protections are filed, our agreement is void. I'm going to leave now. He practically ran out of the cottage, clearly wanting no part in the fallout. Megan grabbed her purse angrily. This is unbelievable, she snapped. We needed your help, and you're punishing us. Henry's voice remained steady. A request is honest. A trap is not. You chose the trap. Jason stood quietly, shoulders shaking slightly. Dad. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know any other way. Henry looked at him for a long moment, eyes softer now but still firm. You always had another way. You just didn't want the uncomfortable one, the truthful one. Jason nodded slowly, accepting the truth like a man taking a heavy blow. Henry pointed to the door. Both of you need to leave. And Jason, choose who you want to be from this day forward. As they stepped out, Henry knew the story was now shifting toward consequence, reflection, and eventually, resolution. Henry watched Jason's SUV disappear down the gravel road until the dust settled back into silence. The cottage felt heavier than before, but not because of sadness, because of clarity. He walked back inside and poured himself a glass of water, hands steady for the first time in days. Mr. Carter appeared a few minutes later, having seen the cars leave. Well, the old lawyer said gently, that looked intense. Henry nodded. They tried to take everything from me. Mr. Carter placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. And you stood your ground. That's strength, Henry. Later that evening, Henry sat by the fireplace with the legal documents spread across the table. Firelight danced across the pages, casting warm shadows. He thought about Jason as a child, bright, curious, always asking questions about Henry's restoration projects. Somewhere along the line, fear and bad choices had replaced that curiosity. Henry sighed. I'm not responsible for his mistakes, he whispered, though part of him still felt the ache of fatherhood. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a slow, calming breath. 2 days later, Jason called. Henry hesitated but answered. Dad, Jason's voice was shaky. Megan left. She said she won't go down with me. I've lost everything. Henry remained quiet, letting the words settle. Jason, he finally said, you didn't lose everything. You lost what was built on lies. Jason took a trembling breath. Dad. I need help. Real help this time. I'm ready to admit it. Henry closed his eyes, feeling a complicated mixture of pain and hope. Then we start with honesty, he said softly. Jason drove up the mountain the next morning alone. This time, he didn't arrive with confidence or expectations. He walked to the porch slowly, like a man approaching a truth he could no longer avoid. Henry opened the door before he could knock. Jason's eyes were red, tired, and ashamed. "Dad," he whispered, "I'll do whatever it takes to fix my life. Just, don't give up on me yet." Henry studied his son for a long moment and finally nodded. "Sit down," he said. "We're going to talk." They sat at the same dining table where the confrontation happened. But now, the air felt different, quieter, heavier, more real. "Tell me everything," Henry said. Jason took a deep breath and confessed it all. The poker debts. The late-night gambling. The constant fear of being caught. "I kept digging deeper," he said. "And when I was drowning, I thought the cabin would save me." Henry listened without interrupting. When Jason finished, tears streamed down his face. "I'm so sorry, Dad." Henry's voice was calm. "I believe you're sorry. But sorry is the beginning, not the solution." Henry outlined the first step, accountability. "You need professional help," he said. "Real counseling, not promises." Jason nodded quickly. "I'll go. I'll attend every session." Henry continued, "And you need to face the consequences. Repay your debts slowly. Build your life from the bottom up." Jason wiped his eyes and whispered, "I'll do it, Dad. Whatever it takes." Henry leaned back in his chair. "Then you're not beyond saving. But I won't carry you anymore. You're walking this path yourself." For the first time in years, Jason felt something he hadn't felt before, relief. Not because the problem was solved, but because the truth was finally out. He looked around Henry's cottage, noticing the craftsmanship, the restored beams, the careful details. "I never realized how much work you put into your life," Jason said softly. "I took everything for granted." Henry nodded. "You only saw the results, not the effort. Life teaches differently when you have to build things with your own hands." Jason lowered his eyes in shame, but also determination. After their conversation, Henry offered Jason a cup of tea. They sat on the deck watching the pine trees sway gently in the wind. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Jason whispered, "Dad, do you think Liam will forgive me someday?" Henry looked at him with softened eyes. "Liam loves you. Children forgive faster than adults, but they also notice everything. Show him you're better. Don't just say it." Jason nodded slowly. He understood the difference now. Words made promises. Actions made change. Before leaving, Jason turned back at the cottage door. "Dad, thank you for not pressing charges," he said quietly. "Megan said you legally could have." Henry nodded. "I could have. But punishment without growth is just cruelty, Jason. I wanted you to understand the damage, not fear the law." Jason swallowed hard. "I'm grateful. Truly." Henry looked at him, seeing the boy he once knew hidden beneath the man he had become. "Go do the work," he said. "Come back when you have progress to show." Jason left with a promise, and this time, Henry felt it might be real. That night, Henry sat by the fire reflecting on everything. Betrayal. Pain. Honesty. A small beginning of healing. He knew the path ahead would be long for Jason, but at least it was a path forward. The cottage no longer felt like a place he had to defend. It felt like a place he had reclaimed. As the fire crackled softly, Henry whispered, "We're not done yet, but we're heading towards something better." Outside, the mountains stood silent, steady, watching every step of their slow return toward forgiveness. Over the next few weeks, Jason kept his word. He sent Henry photos from every therapy session, each one showing his signature on the attendance sheet. He forwarded confirmations of small payments he had begun making toward his debts. For the first time, Henry saw effort, not excuses. On quiet evenings, Henry would sit on the deck, look at the mountains, and think about the strange way life delivered its lessons. "Some foundations need to crack before they can be rebuilt," he whispered. And Jason was finally rebuilding. One Saturday morning, Jason drove up with Liam for a supervised visit. The boy ran into Henry's arms immediately. "Grandpa." "Dad says he's getting better," Liam said brightly. Jason stood behind him, humbler than before. "Hi, Dad," he said softly. Henry smiled, motioning them both inside. Watching Jason help Liam with his jacket, Henry saw gentleness he hadn't noticed in years. Jason was quieter, slower, more considerate. This wasn't the same man who had burst into the cottage demanding signatures. This was someone learning how to be a father again. After lunch, Henry and Jason stepped outside while Liam colored pictures in the living room. The wind rustled softly through the pines. "Dad," Jason began, "I know I can't change the past, but I want to earn a place in your life again. Not because of the cabin, because you're my father." Henry studied him a moment. "Then keep showing up. People don't heal with speeches, they heal with consistency." Jason nodded. "I understand. And I'm not quitting." For once, Henry believed him. A month later, Jason arrived again. This time, he held a small sealed envelope. "Done," he said quietly as he handed it to Henry. Inside was a detailed record, 30 days of therapy, debt payments, and written reflections his counselor required. Henry read every page carefully. "You're doing the work," he said. Jason swallowed. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I want Liam to be proud of me someday." Henry placed the papers back inside the envelope. "He already loves you. Now give him reasons to trust you." Soon, Megan called Henry unexpectedly. Her voice was calmer than before. "Henry, I heard Jason's improving," she said. "He's still a long way from perfect, but he's trying." Megan sighed softly. "Liam needs both of us, and I can see Jason trying for the first time." Henry didn't respond with anger. Instead, he said, "Mistakes are heavy, Megan. But sometimes people become better after breaking." She paused. "Do you think Jason deserves another chance?" Henry answered honestly. "That depends on his consistency, not his apologies." As winter approached, snow dusted the mountaintops. Jason visited more regularly, each time bringing updates, new budgeting habits, help from support groups, and proof of steady work. Henry found himself slowly letting go of the bitterness that had once filled his chest. He didn't forget, but forgiveness started to grow like a small plant pushing through cold soil. One evening, Jason stood by the fire and said, "Dad, thank you for not giving up on me." Henry replied quietly, "I didn't save you. You chose to save yourself. I only stepped aside so you could see the road." On the first snowy weekend of December, Jason arrived with Liam holding a wrapped box. "Grandpa, open it," the boy shouted. Henry unwrapped a wooden picture frame, beautifully crafted, edges sanded smooth, varnished gently. Inside it was a photo of Henry, Jason, and Liam taken on a recent hike. On the back, Jason had engraved 7 small words, "Thank you for letting me rebuild, Dad." Henry stared at it, emotion swelling in his chest. "You made this?" he asked. Jason nodded. "With my own hands. Just like you taught me." Later that afternoon, Henry and Jason stepped out onto the deck. Snowflakes drifted silently around them. "Dad," Jason said gently, "I don't expect everything to go back to the way it was. I just want a chance to rebuild the right way." Henry took a long breath, looking at the mountains that had witnessed every moment of this journey. "You have that chance," he said. "But remember, trust is earned through time." Jason's eyes softened. "I know. And I'm ready to earn it." Inside the cottage, Liam was decorating the small tree Henry had set up. "Grandpa," he called. "Look. All 3 of us are here today." Henry walked in with Jason and smiled at the sight. For the first time, the cottage didn't feel like a fortress he had to defend. It felt like a home being mended, slowly, piece by piece. Jason helped Liam hang the last ornament, and Henry saw something new in his son's face: humility, gratitude, and a quiet strength. A strength born from failure, not luck. As sunset painted the snowy peaks in gold and red, the 3 of them stepped onto the deck together. Henry rested his hand on Jason's shoulder. "You almost lost everything," he said softly. "But sometimes losing everything makes a man discover who he really is." Jason nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Dad, for stopping me before I destroyed myself." Henry looked at the mountains and whispered, "Some foundations crack to warn us before the roof collapses." The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying away the last remnants of the past. And there, in the quiet glow of evening, Henry finally felt what he had fought so hard to find: peace, forgiveness, and a family rebuilt on truth.